Inside a glass-lined boardroom, a $5 billion client meeting unfolds with practiced calm. Legal counsel listens, tablets glow. Confidence feels rehearsed. Mid-explanation, the vice president interrupts and casually reframes the narrator as support staff. The sentence lands heavier than intended. Silence spreads. Eyes shift. No correction follows. The client notices everything. The narrator remains composed, hands still, voice quiet. Respect drains from the room without argument. The client leans forward and asks who designed the architecture now being praised. No one answers immediately. Pages stop turning. Breathing becomes audible. Authority hesitates. The client closes his folder, stands, and thanks everyone politely. He does not extend a hand to the vice president. He nods once toward the narrator instead. The meeting ends without closure, leaving power rearranged permanently. Years earlier, the narrator entered quietly, without sponsors or spectacle. He learned systems others avoided and stayed late repairing failures no one documented. When outages hit, phones rang at night, and his name followed. While executives rotated and strategies rebranded, his credentials remained unchanged. He memorized client environments, understood dependencies, and anticipated failures before alerts triggered. Trust grew through consistency, not visibility. The client called directly when stakes rose because solutions arrived without explanation. Inside the company, leadership praised innovation publicly while routing complexity privately toward him. He never asked for titles or spotlight. Access mattered more. Over time, executives inherited authority through promotion while credibility stayed earned. The vice president received a role. The narrator carried responsibility. That difference shaped everything that followed, long before the meeting ever happened. After the meeting dissolves, the client waits near the corridor, unhurried. He invites the narrator to walk. No witnesses linger. His tone remains neutral as he asks whether accountability still exists inside the organization. The narrator answers carefully, choosing accuracy over emotion. He explains recent restructures, diluted oversight, and shortcuts taken to preserve optics. He describes risks now unmanaged and decisions approved without context. No accusations appear, only clarity. The client listens longer than scheduled, occasionally nodding, occasionally silent. This conversation shifts from courtesy to consequence. It is no longer about bruised respect. It is about exposure. Before leaving, the client requests a follow-up meeting with fewer attendees and different names. The request changes the trajectory quietly and decisively. Inside headquarters, leadership congratulates itself on perceived control. The vice president jokes about hierarchy and efficiency. Emails circulate celebrating alignment and momentum. Confidence feels earned, not questioned. No one notices the missing confirmation from the client. Calendars remain open. Smiles persist. The narrator continues working exactly as before, documenting processes, preserving logs, altering nothing. Silence becomes deliberate. Each decision now carries weight. Each approval leaves a trace. The vice president signs off on changes without review, assuming authority ensures safety. No alarms sound. No warning surface. What he approves quietly removes safeguards he never knew protected him. By mistaking calm for compliance, he accelerates consequences already in motion. The system remains stable. The foundation does not. The follow-up meeting occurs in a smaller room with fewer chairs. The client arrives with legal and financial advisors. The narrator receives the invitation directly. The vice president does not. Discussion begins without tension. Governance structures are reviewed. Accountability paths are examined. Misrepresentations surface through timelines and documentation. Evidence speaks without tone or blame. The room understands this is procedural, not personal. Risk exposure replaces reputation. Contracts replace confidence. Silence fills gaps where justification might have lived. The client explains obligations to stakeholders and regulators, outlining necessary changes. He pauses and asks a practical question about future contracting arrangements. No one answers immediately. Eyes turn toward the narrator, not as an act of loyalty, but of logic. The decision begins forming before words appear. The final joint meeting is brief and controlled. The client thanks the company for past cooperation and announces a structured transition. Language remains respectful. Distance becomes official. He explains that continuity matters and introduces the narrator as his future point of engagement. The room processes the shift slowly. Papers close. Chairs slide backward. No objection surface. The narrator gathers his notes calmly and stands beside the client. There is no announcement, only movement. They walk toward the door together. No voices rise. No explanations are demanded. The vice president remains seated, posture unchanged, eyes fixed forward. The room suddenly feels smaller, quieter, diminished. When the door closes, authority stays behind. Credibility has already left the building, accompanied by the only person the client trusted to carry it forward. Inside the company, urgency replaces confidence. Reviews begin quietly. Committees form. Emails grow cautious. Language softens. Authority diffuses without formal announcement. The vice president notices meetings shrinking and invitations thinning. Decisions once automatic now require explanation. Influence fades without confrontation. The system adjusts around him. Elsewhere, the narrator rebuilds deliberately. Title aligns with responsibility. Equity reflects contribution. Trust becomes contractual. The work resumes with clarity instead of friction. He does not speak publicly about the departure. He does not need to. Results emerge steadily. Stability returns. Clients remain. Time passes. Narratives settle. Those who watched quietly understand what shifted. Those who spoke loudly search for reasons. Reputation does not collapse dramatically. It simply relocates to where it was always supported. With distance comes perspective. At this stage of life, power rarely announces itself. It reveals itself through alignment between words and outcomes. People who diminish others publicly often misunderstand where value truly resides. Experience does not compete. It accumulates. It waits until pressure arrives and then performs without commentary. Respect follows reliability, not hierarchy. The narrator never pursued revenge or recognition. He remained present where accountability lived and competence operated. When the moment came, movement replaced argument. The client did not follow a title or an office. He followed certainty. He followed someone who understood risk, responsibility, and consequence. In the end, nothing was taken. It was transferred naturally. Authority stayed seated. Credibility stood up and walked forward without hesitation.